Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Crystal Cocoon. For today's episode, we have a special guest. One of our clients, Kerri, has agreed to come on and talk about her experience with us.
Bravely agreed to come on.
Very
Share
bravely.
her experiences with.
Very bravely. Yeah, she was working through being seen at first, and it was a good opportunity to work through that. So we figured we'd have her on the show, and she'd share a little about her experiences, as well as talk about a couple questions, comments, and thoughts she had from listening to the podcast as well. So in addition to talking about her own experiences, we'll also cover some topics brought up, like the evolution of consciousness, the awakening of gifts, a little bit about synchronicities that happen when your gifts are awakened, the dynamics of realities and cosmic cycles.
Yeah, we talked about a lot.
We did talk about a lot.
We talked about so much, we're actually going to break it up into 2 parts for you guys.
And so thanks for listening, and here we go.
Welcome to the Crystal Cocoon. We have a special episode today. We have a guest speaker that we'll be interviewing and working through some process with you. She was recently going through some things, and I thought it would be useful to all the listeners that we share out here a little bit what's going on, so you can work or hear how we work and a little bit of our processes, and possibly get some new questions answered that you may have yourself. So our guest today is Kerri. Welcome, Kerri.
Great, thank you.
And of course, I'm Brandon Lapierre, and
I'm Jessie Dujari.
when we first talked about doing this, a couple things came up for you, Kerri, and one of them was being seen. And so I want to go over a little bit about that, but first I want to go and talk about what's been happening with you since the energy work that caused you to reach out and want some consultation and possibly more energy work, and what's been happening with you since that last session, and you can even talk about your evolutionary process and your own journey.
Sure. And I believe it was 2 weeks ago today that I had Brandon do a little sample session with me, and I had a little bit of energy work before, but what's difficult was having the energy work done, but not having the ability to verbally process it with somebody who had the background in energy work to then be able to answer some questions that I had about what was going on with me. So after a sample session, about it was a little bit more than 10 minutes, probably a little less than 15, somewhere in there. I felt very, very strong energy, and that when I went home that night, it was just a kind of a normal evening, but within about 18 hours, all of a sudden I was very tired, but not in a sleepy way, relaxed, but didn't really want to do anything, but in just an interesting space. My mind was very quiet for about 2 or 3 days. I was a little bit of a euphoria state. I remember you mentioning that in a previous podcast, which was very true for me. And just very peaceful and very excited because I knew there was going to be unfolding happening. But I reached out to Brandon and the Crystal Cocoon team because I thought, okay, it's one thing to have it done, but now I want to process what's happening, and with people who have had the experience themselves and have been through this journey, had more years, more months or more years. And so since those 2 weeks, I've actually, it's been about a year now, year and a half since I had some energy work done, so I could feel energy once in a while, or if I would hold a crystal, it would kind of help it get going. But I'm feeling it anytime I want now.
That's
Wonderful.
wonderful.
Throughout the workday, I'll just be having a moment, and if I just am quiet for a moment, I can start feeling it running. I can't even say it that when I feel that running, if it's good or bad, it just feels right. It just feels like I'm just being connected, and as opposed to just going out through the workday and our routine, and just, I don't know, gives more presence, I guess is the best way to describe that. So that's been about the last 2 weeks. And I'm very excited to be here today because I wanted to be able to share that, and if there's any awareness that you have as to what is happening with me, kind of is why I'm here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had just a 15-minute session with Brandon? Far out. You're awesome, dude.
Thanks.
He can accomplish a lot in 15 minutes, can't he?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we enjoy a lot is hearing these stories. So thank you for sharing that with us. So one of the things that popped for me is while you're talking about that 3 days, 2 or 3 day period of just that quiet calm. To me, that is the most amazing period because it's kind of like a deconstruction of what you once held as truths and a creating of space for this whole new understanding of the world that's around you. It's almost like opening the space for that sense to begin to evolve of this new understanding. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And unfolding, it's exactly how we feel it is.
And something else that just comes to my mind that has changed also is my meditation practice. It's only been about the last couple of years that I started with meditation, and I was too distracted at all times. So, and I remember Brandon mentioning that when you started meditation, you did a guided meditation, and that's really what I had to do.
Yeah.
To keep, and it was short, and then they got a little bit longer. But even these last couple of weeks, I can now sit without music or anything, and I can just sit.
That's awesome.
So that was very, and I just thought, I'm just going to take this quiet moment, and I sat there and I realized, wait, I'm just doing this right now with not having to rely on, it was fine to have music playing, whatever I needed to do. I was okay with that too, but that was also something that's happening for me.
I have a lot of my clients that I work with actually, they'll talk about their struggles with meditation, and I think one of the big misconceptions that people have about meditation is this idea that's been created for us by the popular media that this meditation is this period of sitting in complete silence and complete stillness, and your mind is the clear pool. Well, that's the end goal.
Well, that is one type.
One type of ways to get to that clarity space. Exactly, one type. But so many people, especially in our culture, that's a very stimulant-heavy culture. Our foods are full of stimulants. Our pocket has a stimulating device in it. Our computers are stimulating. They're constantly...
Our daily routine begins with stimulants.
Exactly. So it's very challenging for people to step out of that stimulated space and go into a complete presence of this moment.
It's a drastic shift.
Yeah, exactly. So when I work with clients, that's the first thing I do is teach them a guided meditation that they can guide themselves through, and that allows them to be able to achieve that space of calm much more easily. And then they can use that guiding of the meditation to work on themselves as well. It becomes a part of that self-working process, which to me is the whole point of meditation, really. Is to get in there and work on your own energy. Find ways to work on what you're thinking, what you're feeling, changing your processing, opening and exposing yourselves to new ideas.
Right.
So that's awesome to hear that was your result.
Very exciting.
Wonderful. That's great. What did you do with her? What was your focus for the 15 minutes? I'm curious.
Well,
if you don't mind him sharing.
No, because I actually don't know necessarily. I mean, a little bit. We talked a little bit, but we had very limited time because it was in between this psychic gallery, and so there were other things going on, and so we just had a lull. I said, would you like to work on me for a few minutes? And we didn't talk much after.
Well, I already had a feeling of what you were looking for, and it was, and then you had mentioned like not feeling a certain aspect when you were doing work. You're like, oh, this thing, I don't feel it too much, but this is what we do. I'm like, okay. And that was the previous time. And so that and just the kind of overall feeling I got that you were ready for more. And you were looking for something and may not even known what you were looking for. And it was that sense of expansion. And that's something I do a lot with people that come to me. Usually the people come to me are looking for something like that, looking for expansion, not even knowing what they're looking for. A lot of it was just opening up your field at first, and then getting you attuned to a new type of energy, to where it is permeating throughout your body. And that's something of a philosophy that we have, is getting you used to the fact that all of you is energy, all of you has access to energy, and stepping away from the philosophy of this is something you do to this is something you are. This is a way of being, right? And then, and in addition to that, there was opening up of your psychic centers, and I remember you got a little nervous
But
about that.
not too much. Don't open me too much.
I don't want to walk around thinking I'm crazy. Right. So after assuring you that wasn't going to happen, you aren't going to walk around and thinking you're in some other dimension and be locked up anytime soon.
The greatest fear.
And you're okay. So,
Right.
so that's pretty much what I did as an opening. I don't think I did any of the what we call seeding work. I may have done a little bit of something like that, but not like the full shebang. It was mostly just an opening and clearing of those
So
channels.
you're plowing the field.
Plowing the field,
For the
exactly.
seed. Yeah, we had to do some of that one for my heart seed.
Which makes sense that would be why my mind was calm and clear and quiet. And
It was shutting off those neural processes, so like this new wiring can take seat and take hold. And so that quiet lull that you had, that's exactly what that was. It was you shutting down the old processes so you can open up this new way of being. Because with your mind active and racing so much, you're not going to be aware of all this other here. Because that's what's going to take the majority of your energy, is these racing thoughts. And so being stuck so in your head, and then thinking about, well, overthinking things. And then there's belief systems wrapped up in that. And when you hold these two tight, and then that thinking process is running on overdrive, it doesn't make room for all these other things. So when you do energy work, generally that will shut off. Usually doesn't matter what type of energy work you're doing, as long as you run an entity, that will like tone down a little bit. But there's certain kinds that are more effective at shutting off that babbler going on up there than others. And
I think it often takes, with the babbling, the running in the head. I was just working with someone last night on that also, and I think there's also a degree of avoidance. It's recognizing, oh, I'm creating this distraction. This is yet another way of distracting myself from looking at something else. So when with my client that I was working with last night, it was more a matter for her of, okay, when do the thoughts start to run? What's happening around you? Starting to identify what triggers. But that doesn't sound like have you had any of the running thoughts since the work that Brandon did?
Because I don't overthink things ever.
Good.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But so there were a couple
Sorry,
times.
Sarcasm skipped me that moment. I am gullible too.
Are you? Oh, I'm gullible.
I'm like, oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. I haven't thought of that, if it's more so or less so than previously. In general, my awarenesses are so much more aware. I'm so much more aware than I used to be, and mindfulness I practice that a lot. So that's a little bit difficult for me to answer if it's happened in the last 2 weeks or not.
Well, I would say that that's probably right there alone is the answer.
Yeah.
It's not something that's bothering you.
Yeah, right.
It's not something that's distracting you. It's not an issue or challenge that you're feeling faced with.
Yeah, right.
So that's a good thing.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
just like when a lot of people have problems or that we work through for belief work or
Even physiological problems.
right.
Like some people will
Sometimes.
come to us because they're in pain. You know, like we worked on a client just a few days ago who had neck and shoulder pain. And so I was checking in with her and I said, so how is the neck and shoulder? And she's, oh yeah, that's right. I haven't felt it. I'm not sure. Is it better? I'm like, well, I think that's the answer. You're not feeling the pain. It's not distracting you. So, and that's I think that's really the truth of all of our experience. We create a lot of distractions for ourselves because we maybe don't have the language or the understanding or the guide to lead us into these other areas. So we create these distractions around us. I was working with another woman who was wanting to address her safety issues. And while we started to focus in on it, a bee started to buzz around her. And it was so loud I could hear it through the phone, because it was a phone session. And she's like, "Oh my God, I've got to go inside." And I said, "Okay, well, are you allergic to bees?" And she said, "No." And I was like, "Okay, well, the bee's not there to sting you. The bee's is serving as a communication for you right now. So allow it." And as soon as she did, the bee landed on her shoulder. And then and then when we were working more and we got more to the root of what the fear was, she was like, the bee, it started buzzing her more aggressively, and it landed on her nose. And she was like, "I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore." And she really freaked out, and she's like, "I'm going inside." And as soon as she did that, the bee flew off and was gone. And I was like, "Okay, so now are you really ready to look at this?" And she's like, "Okay." And we went a little further through the session, and we realized there was, some cords and things removal, and she's like, "I need the bee back. I feel like I need the bee to come and help me now." And so it was this fascinating turn of, creating this distraction around her. And then, as she went through, then, oh, okay, now I need it for something else. It is showing me. So we can have a whole different attitude about the bee.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's what I think about distraction.
We like to distract ourselves.
Well, and it's a great big pointer.
Yeah.
Look, this is what you want to look at. We think it's avoiding something, but it's really like a great big, caution flag. Look here, I think.
Well, what I was going to say too is a lot of times when you'll work through a belief system, you work through whatever it is you're working through. A lot of times the people will go back and go, "What was I working on again?" They won't even remember. And so that also
It's gone.
It's gone. All of it's gone. The belief system, the memory, all of it's gone. They're like, "Oh yeah, I did do that," but it's nothing holding it there no more. So the energy isn't right up in their face. They're not like, "Oh," So when that dissipates, it's like they have to reach for the memory and go, "Oh yeah, that was that experience over there," and it doesn't feel like it's a part of them anymore. So that's another thing that happens.
It holds no triggers anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really, the only other time I experienced that without energy work was in psychology with EMDR, which is an emotional trauma processing. And I remember when she first said, my therapist said, "You're not going to not remember the trauma, but it's not going to hold any weight for you anymore. It's not going to hold any of the emotional experiences." But with energy work, you really do. It's like it slips away. It's like the memory begins to slip away. So readdressing the trauma that I had addressed through therapeutic means with our energy work has made it so the identity of even being a person who needed it has gone away, which is, I think, the really most amazing thing about energy work. That's one of the things that hooked me. Was, I can find a whole new way to be.
I have a thought on what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
a little off
That's okay.
that point a little bit. But when you're talking about when you clear that away, something that's happening for me also is I'm becoming very spacey. And so that was one thing I wanted to kind of actually ask about because I have more room, and so if you have any thoughts or ideas or on that, because it was really funny, I was actually, I felt so much energy the other day. It was kind of funny. I was laughing to myself when I thought, I feel like I'm going to beam me up. I mean, I feel like I'm just going to kind of go somewhere else because I was just like, woo. But I was kind of spacey. I've noticed in the past when I've had energy work done, I've done that a little bit too. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or why that might be experiencing it or.
Sometimes during big shifts, afterwards, the person can feel like they're a little spacey for a while until like this new way of being kind of becomes the norm. I've worked with other people where I've done some major work. Actually, you had some problems at first with that seating.
Oh my goodness. That's kind of an understatement.
Yeah. Well, that was some major shifting and opening, and that work was that was some big work.
That was big work.
So for her, it was such a drastic change in the perception that. Well, why don't you talk about it?
I knew you were going to say that.
Sounds like a good story.
Well, I think I touched upon this story once before.
You did a little bit.
Yeah, when we were talking about implants. I think we were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, energetic implants. It was a question of a week from one of our other listeners. So what happened was that Brandon, I was doing some work that was bigger. Well, it was bigger than where I was at developmentally, and I wanted to continue the work, but it was right when I first met Brandon. Actually, I think it was just a week or two later, maybe.
Uh-huh.
And we were chatting on Facebook, and I was already in this expanding process, and kind of like, oh my God, my brain is like all over the place. And we were talking, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm laughing so hard right now. And he's like, me too. I'm like, no, I mean, I'm laughing out loud. He's like, me too, you know. And then
that process was funny.
that was awesome.
So after because this was all done through Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
So we weren't in person,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, I'm getting that I need to do that. She's like, okay, and so I did the seeding work, and then I could see it holographically where it was in the center of her brain. And when I reached my fingers in there and touched it, we would both erupt hysterically in laughter.
Yes. And then it got to where even if he wasn't touching it energetically, if we even looked at it,
Mhm.
it was like this eruption of laughter. And I've never experienced that level of laughter, I don't think, ever in my life. For no reason, you know? Like, I've laughed till I cried before, but
Yeah.
not for, like, nothing, you know? Quit looking at me. So after that happened, and I felt like in my forehead, I felt like I had a mountain, like, on my forehead. It felt, because he planted it through that third eye area, or at least that's what it felt like. And it was growing, like, there. And you know how, like, when you get a pimple and you're like, oh my God, it's Mount Vesuvius or something, and then you look at it and it's not that big, you know, but it sure feels big. That's how my forehead felt. And it felt that way for a couple of days. And I had to learn to stop looking at it because I would just erupt in laughter. So for the first day, I felt like my head, have you seen those images where it's like a body and then there's the universe in place of the head and it's all expansive? And
Right.
that's what I felt like. I felt like this body with this really big floating top heavy universe. And walking was hard. Thinking about anything was impossible. I couldn't cook. I couldn't clean. I couldn't read. I barely talked to anybody. I only talked to people I knew I wasn't going to have to think around at all. It was really challenging that first day. And the second day I tried to drive. That didn't work very well. I came right back home. And it was about the third or fourth day that I was able to kind of really settle in and go, okay, this is the new norm. This is the way I shall be from this point forward. And then the resistance stopped, and then I began to acclimate more to
Well, I
that
was
feeling.
stumbling a little bit in
Yeah.
my pace
Mm.
and my walk, and I was kind of holding a wall up at one point. I was
Yeah.
I was standing there. I was just kind of, I'm just going to lean against the wall because I was feeling a little wobbly.
Yeah.
Not in I wasn't like dizzy or
No.
not, because if you're dizzy, I would get nauseous or something like that. And none of that was happening. It didn't feel bad. It
Yeah.
just was.
Yeah.
But it was different for me, and I was wondering if, I figured it was probably related. And
It's also I believe the neurosynapses are now processing new sensory information, and they don't
Mhm.
know what they're getting yet.
Yeah.
You know, you're building a whole new synaptic process to be able to process what you're experiencing. It's kind of like when blind individuals go through the surgery, occasionally it's happened where they have their sight restored. And there's one case my husband was telling me about, and this woman, she had never had sight, and she had a sight given to her, not restored, but given to her in her 40s. And when she was sitting there, she couldn't identify by looking at a chair that was a chair. She'd look at it and it just looked like a bunch of lines, and she couldn't understand it, lines intersecting in weird colors. And so she'd close her eyes and touch it, and, oh, it's a chair.
wow.
And then she'd open her eyes and, oh, that's a chair? That's what chairs look like? But she had no three-dimensional processing whatsoever. The brain couldn't even conceive of a visual three-dimensional process. So stairs looked like lines, like a wall of lines before her. So it took time for that to grow in her brain, in her visual cortex. It's kind of like that. It's your clair cortex.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been an interesting thing the last couple of weeks. Fortunately, it's not continually like that.
Yeah.
I'm walking around like I'm drunk or something at work, but it was kind of a fun experience. It wasn't a scary thing but just so thank you for sharing that that's a normal thing and that happens and
Well,
That's
she
letting me
did
know how
reach out. She's
profound.
like, I don't think I can do this. I'm like, you can do this. It's
I
only
was.
short term.
Yeah, I mean, the first day I was like, oh God, I don't know. I can't do it. Yeah, I remember that. I
Yeah.
forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
I'm like, you're in the right space for it. You have the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely closed my calendar out. It was like, yeah, I had to really take that time. And I still find at points like I'll be processing some new aspect of it as it unfolds. Like a few weeks later, was that when you were moving? No, that was a few months later actually. I was helping him move, and we'd come back, and I was going to drop him off, and we ended up talking because that's usually what happens. Right. We're sitting in the car talking, and he's like, "Oh, I need to readdress that seed," and so he looked back into it, and then it was like it grew down, and then it blossomed into this like being plant-like thing. It was all totally different. Like a whole nother unfolding happened, and it was that. And again, that process went through, not as extreme or as intense, thank God, but it was another like unfolding and creating of space, and now it's conscious and it's moving and it's aware, and oh, that's me. You gotta let those things kind of.
So what has that created for you? What did?
Oh man, God, how I don't even know how to put that into words. Well, I guess, gosh, that's a hard question.
You can think about it.
Let me think about it. Brandon, say something. Speak.
Well, usually what happens is it's a whole new level of consciousness. So it's a whole paradigm shift, which means the very way you look at and interpret the world changes. And because of that difference in your interpretation and perception of the world, your ability to do certain things shift. So your sensory perception, how you interact with things, and then your awareness of like the subtleties of your own thoughts, that changes. So the overall awareness is what shifts and increases. And she was talking about the stars and the galaxies that spin around. I see that a lot with my clients who are really opening up to ready for these major shifts, and they all talk about their sense of oneness increases, their sense of unification with the all that is increases, their sense of connectedness with others, their sense of everything going on around them, their environment, like all that shifts. And sometimes people will sit there in this euphoria and bliss for a while as they really take in all this new information and this new connection. And that's another thing that really increases, is that feeling and connection to source.
And also, I think for me at least, the connection to everything else as well. Before that, I had a sense of the web of humanity, that network of all the interconnected people. But after that, no, it wasn't a sense. It was an understanding, a knowledge, a feeling of being connected to all of that, as well as what's beyond. And since then, I've become far more consciously aware of what's happening energetically. I think you're probably also starting to notice things are happening, and you're like, what is that? I don't know. Feels good. I'm going to let it go. Okay. Right. And that's that early stages of, the dawning of awareness. Oh, I just walked into a kitchen and I don't know these spices, but it smells good. I'm not sure what it's going to taste like yet. And that's really what was happening for me, was I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what it is. Oh, now I understand what's happening. Although it's not perfect, but it's much stronger, much better.
The sense of inner knowing, that increases. That just that knowing of things.
My relationships, the way that I interact with people has shifted more because I understand and know myself. So I've always been a person who, let's say I have a discord with somebody, I walk away and I try to figure out what did I do to contribute to this, how was I participating. First I analyze myself, and then I go back and then I look at them too. Like, what were they trying to really show me? What was their experience? Trying to put myself in them. That's always been a process for me. But now it's a seamless process. It's happening in the experience instead of out of the experience. I'm able to be present in the experience, be myself, be whole of myself. My understanding of what my energy level is. Brandon and I talk a lot about this, that we don't focus in protection at all anymore. We welcome these things because they in and of themselves teach us the shadows, the belief systems, the energies that we're still holding.
And I had heard that really by being an allowance, things just flow through you.
Exactly.
As opposed to causing the resistance or holding of it.
Exactly. And that's really where, that's where disease comes from.
Right.
Because when we are energetically trying to hold an energy which is intended to flow, then we have to create more physiological blockages to hold that energy in place. And those manifest in terms of, illness. They're inflammation. We're holding the water, and water is our conductivity. We're holding our fluid. We hold on to these things. We create bacterial colonies that create infections because we're not processing through these things. And that's one of the things that I at least do in sessions, I'm pretty sure Brandon does too, is we get the client to bring their focus to this blockage, to this discomfort, to this illness, and open it up and allow source to flow through it and look at what it is. What's coming up for you? It doesn't matter how crazy it is. Allow that to be. And we notice and we've heard and we've received channeled information about how much humanity tries to avoid feeling sad, avoid suffering, avoid pain as though
there's a wrongness to it.
Right. And there's no wrongness.
Right.
I have one client who's grieving right now. And she's like, I just feel like I'm going to be drowned by the grief. Well, you should feel that way. You love this person. You are grieving. Allow that to be instead of judging yourself as being wrong for feeling this loss. You're supposed to be sad. You're supposed to feel overwhelmed. That tells you to readdress your priority schedule. You're supposed to feel frustrated. That tells you to reestablish your boundaries. If we avoid them, then they become problems in our body.
Right.
Yeah. So flowing of the energy.
And that's all energy work is all about that. Whether
Exactly.
it's acupuncture and the chi and whatever.
All the modalities are tools, exactly,
Right.
that allow people who don't have the contextualized notions of what energy really is. It creates that context for them. So perhaps they have a block of thinking, I don't even know what energy is. I mean, I guess it's true. So I go to an acupuncturist. That's right, they have needles. They'll put the needles in the right spot. And they know where to put the needles. Okay, I can let the energy flow because they're doing it. And that allows them, it's a way of giving us permission to receive this outside influence of our energy. So that's really why there are so many modalities, because we all have different kinds of blocks and different kinds of ideas and beliefs about it. I love it when he does that. Brandon just did a whole head thingy because something flew through. He's flowing.
Kind of when you're talking about energy, the flowing of energy, you do energy work for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping not to keep things held in, and
Mm-hmm.
as you were describing so beautifully. And something that really, really resonated with me in one of your episodes, podcasts, because I have listened to them all so far. They're brilliant. And
Thank you.
I wrote it. I had to rewind
Mm-hmm.
and write it all down because it was so profound. And some of it, of course, I know and
Yeah.
have a knowledge of, but you talked about the statement was something about more consciousness. The more conscious you become, the more you unravel false belief,
Yeah.
and by doing of your belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
and it just you get the debris out of the way,
Yeah.
so that you can manifest what you truly want in your life.
Yeah.
So that a huge benefit
Yeah.
to also doing energy work.
Yes.
And it was so when I read that, the reason I took that extra time to write that sentence and reflect on it, I shared it with my husband, and he's like, right, you know, because we both have been law of attraction people and working on all of that, and yeah, I felt that. I've been feeling that shift, and I do some access consciousness work, and we do energy clearing with, they call it bars, where you do 32 points in the head and you clear that out. And it's all about clearing for the purpose of creating space so that you can welcome what you do want into your life.
Yeah.
So you're freeing yourself from, you know, disease and those things,
Right.
but then also abundance. You're just allowing for whatever it is that you want. And so that was just a really powerful statement that I processing, and I think that is happening for me. And things are, and you said that things will show up faster, and I can't believe how fast things are showing up, because I'm sitting here with you too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's an example of how things are fast. How fast. This is within 2 weeks.
Right.
Of me going, you know, I really need someone to kind of help counsel me through all these things that are going on with me.
Yeah.
And it just took, you know, a few days for that
It took
to show
setting
up.
the intention.
Yeah.
Making the decision. I want this.
Yeah.
And then everything unfolds after
It
that.
did.
You know, and probably the decisions that I want this happened before you even found the Crystal Cocoon podcast.
Yes. Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other, that brings up another point too, is when things start to manifest, as we clear the path and as we slip into the flow and the synchronicities start to show up around us, if we don't have all the debris and the distractions, we can see them and we can see what the signs are. You know, I remember there was this time where I was so distracted and I was not present at all. You know, I was wanting to be, but that's not where I was. And I was downtown with my husband, and I came out of the restaurant, and there was this tree right next to the restaurant, and it was so full of crows, and they were all cawing at once, and it was so loud. It was like this cacophony of crows, literally. My husband's blind, and he's like, oh, Jesse, it's a whiteout, you know, because that's, for him, noise is a whiteout, you know, if it's too much noise. And I was like, I know, we'll get around the corner, it should be fine. And I was like, whoa, that was so weird. That's so weird. There's a lot of crows. There must be a lot of garbage or something around. Like, that's how I was thinking about it. And so the next weekend we were out on our date again, and we were in downtown in the same area. And I stepped out and it was like a dark and kind of gray, stormy sky. And I stepped out from this building, and I could hear, again, this cacophony of crows. And it was so loud. And I look up in the sky, and it's like this swirling vortex of crows. Thousands of crows, and the sky beyond it looks like, you know, when you see in these movies, this dark, stormy sky, and it opens and the ship is coming, you know, like, that's what it looked like. And I'm like, I was just struck by it, and my husband's like, let's go, and I'm like, I can't go, just give me a minute. And I just had to stop and watch. The MAX train went by. I couldn't even hear the train. That's how loud the crows were. And it took me a long time, and after that, crows just started showing up everywhere. And then Brandon showed up, and then Hannah Neal showed up, and they have all these crow stories. And then, like, we're at breakfast, and a crow was trying to get in the restaurant, and I mean, crows are flying over the cars, and they're like stopping in the road in front of us, and it's like, okay, I'm listening. I get it, crow, okay, I get it. And then Eric shows up, and he's got a crow tattoo, and he's wearing a crow shirt that his wife had screen printed for him. It's like, so what level do we have to let it get to before we see the synchronicities? So if we're missing them, they just get bigger.
But when you're opening this awareness and you realize your interconnectedness to everything around you, it's really like everything becomes your playground, and the universe speaks to you through literally everything that you encounter.
What used to be stress, it's now fun.
Yeah.
Right.
For that that's exactly what you said. I mean, I can change it very easily that way.
You'll notice your thoughts. You're like, I have a thought about something. I have a question. And you'll see a license plate, or you'll see a sign. You're like, oh, but there's the answer. And it literally, everything becomes your playground. You allow these things to show up in different ways. And that's why certain people have more affinity to certain things, because they understand those symbols. So they'll get things in those symbols, relative to those symbols. So shamans will get animal symbols, crows. and they'll get it everywhere.
Are
But
you calling me a shaman?
you
Just
have some
kidding.
qualities.
I couldn't help it.
But really, it's about opening up to everything. It's not just being in touch with nature. It's being aware and open to everything. And that's like, as you open up more and more to these higher levels of consciousness, that's when it really begins to get fun. And that's when your thoughts will start to manifest so instantly that you surprise yourself.
I already am.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking forward to more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I find with all of my clients and the ones of Brandon's that I've met, and people who really are on the journey, is their sense of joy and play and excitement is what opens up for them. You know, I have very rarely met people who like close down after an energy session. But the fear when approaching the energy session is, I don't know if I can handle all that. I don't know. That's my dark stuff. I even hold the fear. I was just with Brandon and one of his friends, Kirsten, and it was like, and here I'm all like, I'm good. Let me help you with something. And she's like, maybe. And the rest of the night was about me, and it was like, it's hard. It took a few days. I'm in a much better place now. Thank you, Kirsten. It was awesome. But it you know, so we can, every step along the way, there's always more to unfold and open. And that's the exciting thing I think about.
But I think of the periods of time in my life where things were stagnant and humdrum, here we go, getting up again, another day, another dollar, and it seemed like it wasn't really happening then. I'm sure it was to get to where I am now.
Right.
But
well, that was all part of your process.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the things we grow up thinking is this is what a good life is going to look like. So we acquire the good life. We have the job that we want. We have the partner that we want. We have the house. We have the things. We have the kids. You know, we've set the life up, and now what?
But then where's the joy?
Yeah,
Right.
There's nothing fulfilling here, really.
Yeah. Sometimes, but not always.
Right. I mean, it's not like it's bad. There's nothing horrible going on, but I don't feel that engaged excitement to get up every morning. And like Brandon and I, one of the things we talk about a lot is especially since starting to work together, we're like excited to get up and work. Like, are you working today? Are we working today? Like, what are you doing? I know I'm pestering you. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, but you're up and I'm up and I'm talking about this with somebody and I want to tell you all about it. Okay, now I'm going to bed. Okay. You know? Are you up yet?
Well, I found that I didn't need to sleep as much, and I don't need to eat as much.
Yeah,
that's not true every day. But when I get into that mode of really focusing on my purpose and my journey and my work that I'm doing for myself, that's what I find to be true.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where if some shadow work comes up, I'm really excited about it. Really excited. I'm like, this was there. Oh, yeah, let's work through that. And then
he does literally get that face when I find something. He's like, oh,
I didn't know that. That's what that was. I'm working on it. Oh, all right. Let's take care of that.
Well, I get a little disappointed in some ways when I don't have something unfolding today. I'm just like, okay, it's around the corner. It's around the corner. I know something else is coming up. And then when it happens, here we go.
Yeah. And you're sensing and feeling it coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I sensed and felt before I kind of had my awakening 2.5 years ago. I was talking to a friend who's pretty spiritual, in tune with things, and I could talk to him about anything. And I said, there's something happening. I thought it was going to be global. Well, maybe it is. Like, something's happening. I just know something is going to happen, and I didn't know it was me. It was just me that was going to happen. And it's just like, and it wasn't too long after I was starting to realize some things about myself, and I was, the shift that I'm talking about is me. And then, of course, this awakening around so many people, and when was your awakening? A year ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I mean, it's
about that time.
Happening fast.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of theories about why that's happening.
I read the shift, I forget, it was in your Facebook post, you had an article about that.
Which one?
I forget the name of the era we're going into. Maybe you could talk a little about that, because I did have some questions.
And that is all we have time for today's show. Stay tuned next time where we continue this conversation about the coming shift. For now, it will remain a mystery.
So thank you for listening to The Crystal Cocoon. You can find us on YouTube at The Crystal Cocoon, or you can find us on iTunes or Libsyn. You can also find us on Facebook. And we have a discussion group we'd love you to join, and we'd love to hear more questions that all of you have. Thank you very much. And you can also email us your questions or information at thecrystalcocoon@gmail.com.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.